Yes. Well, thank you all for joining tonight. I'm gonna put my slides up here so we can look at something other than my face while I'm talking. And yeah, I have been teaching an introductory science to college students for a very long time. And this is a version of a talk that I give every once in a while. So just to kind of let you know, I know some of you are involved in marine education of a variety of ages of students. This is not meant as a heavy science lecture, so you're not going to get a whole lot of deep science learning, but just kind of a fun, fun little talk that I like to do around Valentine's Day every year to a variety of different audiences. So again, I'm used to people asking questions. My students know that they can ask me a question anytime. So if you have a question, just please go ahead and pop that in the chat, and someone will interrupt me if you have a pressing question. So, today we're going to talk a little bit about how to attract a mate. And we're going to be taking our lessons from the animal kingdom and primarily the marine and aquatic environments and talk about how do organisms find a mate. In general, it is up to the male to attract the female, but that's not always the case. So we're going to talk a little bit about the exceptions to that, as well as just some general patterns that we find in nature. So to start us off with, these are not marine animals. Um, this is a painting, a very famous painting of Penelope. Penelope is a character from the Odyssey by Homer in the 8th century BC. You may or may not remember reading the Odyssey back in high school, but it's a story of the 10 years that Odysseus spends following the Trojan War, trying to find his way home. And while he was lost and trying to find his way home, his wife Penelope, pictured here in pink, was at home with her son Telemachus, who was about 20 years old at the time, and living in their father's empty house, waiting for him to return. This was on the island of Ithaca, if you guys remember your Greek literature from childhood. But joining them in their house was 108 suitors. And these boisterous young men all were vying for Penelope's attention. They all wanted to marry her and take over Odysseus's wealth. And they were all trying to persuade Penelope to marry one of them while enjoying the hospitality of Odysseus's household and eating up his wealth. There's a big plot point in the book. But what this has in common with what we're going to talk about today is how do you woo a potential mate? And especially if there are 108 of you all competing for the same potential mate. So we're going to come back to Penelope in a little bit, but let's start off just by talking about sort of what are the general strategies you've got to look at. So in the competition for mates, there's basically five main strategies that organisms employ, and we're going to talk about little examples of each of these. The first is contests, fighting, feats of strength, that kind of thing. We'll talk about ornaments and beauty, how to be more beautiful than your nearest competitor. We'll talk about behavioral signals, the dance, song, etc. We'll talk about gifts. And lastly, all else fails, we'll talk about sneaky and deceivious ways that you might be able to attract a mate if you don't have anything better to offer. Okay, so if that sounds good, we'll go ahead and get started on that. First off, we're going to talk about contests and fighting. Contests and fighting are the one that most of the time you guys may have seen or heard something about. And in the marine world, the best example I can give you of how to fight for your mates are elephant seals. So I'm going to play a short video for you. It gets a little bit bloody, just going to warn you in advance. So you may want to prepare yourself with your fingers in front of your eyes if you're not a big fan of a little bit of blood. So hang on.
For a bull elephant seal, bigger is better. The males can grow up to 20 feet long and weigh over 8,000 pounds. But it's that long trunk-like snout that really amps up the sex appeal. The bulls use those massive noses to broadcast one message. This is my turf, and to mate here, you have to get through me. Elephant seals are the sumo wrestlers of the marine world. In a battle, bulk is everything, and champs win it all. Gathering harems of 40 to 50 females. Only 1 in 10 males will become an alpha male and father pups. If this bachelor wants a sex life, combat is his only answer. So the time has come to start a fight. The battle grows more intense, and the battered contenders take their fight to the water. The challenger gets a good thrashing, and the big alpha returns to his ladies for his prize. Multiple matings.
Okay. So I told you it was a little bit bloody. So in that video, you see a variety of different pros and cons of the fighting as a strategy for mates. Obviously, fighting is dangerous, and anytime you have to fight for dominance in order to mate, you run the risk of hurting yourself and potentially knocking yourself out of competition altogether. So that's not great. But the benefit here is in elephant seals, for example, it's really common for the biggest, strongest, meanest, toughest male to have more than one female to mate with. In elephant seals, it's 30 to 40 females for every single male. That also gives a really good incentive for the challengers to come and try to challenge the big male, because if they win, then that harem becomes theirs. So there's a big risk and a big reward to that kind of fighting. And then you guys have probably seen this animal. This is a bighorn sheep. Let's go back here. Bighorn sheep, classic example of a slightly less bloody version of fighting for males. And then also you've seen other types of animals as well. These are horses, hooves, teeth, heads, whatever it takes to prove you're the best male is the very common way in fighting for a mate. Although it isn't always the males who fight in a particular bird species, which I don't have a picture of, a redneck phalaropes. It's a small aquatic bird. Often see them in Puget Sound here. The females fight each other for access to the males, and the strongest female is the winner, and she gets to secure the male to be her mate first before others. So, for those of you who are thinking that that all looks a little dangerous, you're right. Not only can you get hurt, but you can get killed. And even if you're not killed or hurt, you still use an awful lot of energy just putting on a good show to be the winner of those fights. What if you put your energy into something a little less aggressive? In that case, you might try ornamentation or just being really beautiful as a way to attract mates. This is very common in the animal kingdom. It's especially common in birds. Anytime you see a very, very brightly colored male, uh, but not necessarily a brightly colored female, then that's likely what's going on. This particular fish is called the rose-veined fairy wrasse, and it lives in the Maldives, and it's essentially the peacock of the ocean. The females do not look like this. They do have a little bit of red and yellow, but they don't have the purple or blue, and they're very somewhat blander than this guy. The male's coloration is an example of ornamentation as a lure to the opposite sex. I mean, just look at this guy. He is absolutely stunning. But why go to all that trouble in the first place, right? Why bother spending all the energy that it takes to look like this if in order just to get a mate? Well, the answer is because females can often only have one batch of eggs or one clutch of eggs in birds. So she gets to be choosy. So that means that she gets to be a little picky, and the males have to really outdo themselves in order to be the one that wins. Males can deliver sperm to dozens or more females if he can convince her to pick him. So if one male is getting lucky with 12 females, what happened to the other 11 not quite so lucky or fabulous males? They don't get a chance to mate at all. So it's worth it to spend all the energy in order to look beautiful. This is, like I said, very common in ducks. These are harlequin ducks. This is an example of the what we call sexual dimorphism that is common in organisms that have to vie for mates. The beautiful duck here, with all the fancy coloring and feathers, is the male harlequin or mandarin duck. Pardon me, mandarin duck. And the browner, blander one that's almost hard to see in the picture, that's the female. Why would the female not bother to look beautiful and brightly colored? She doesn't have to, for number one, but also all that beautiful ornamentation can actually be a hindrance because it makes you really visible. And if you're really visible, then your risk of predation increases. In other words, if you're a bald eagle and you're hunting ducks, one of these is easy to see and the other one is less easy to see. So that's not great. But then why would I mean, what's it when it's in it for the female? Like, what is she like? That's a beautiful duck, but like, why is he better than a different duck? The idea behind this is that ornamentation is expensive. It's not as expensive as fighting, but it's definitely costly in terms of the energy required to produce these feathers and then molt them and then produce them again the following year. If he can look that good, then he is probably very healthy and very capable of finding plenty of food. He can also dodge predators while looking that fabulous. He's probably got good survival skills. So mating with him will mean that your offspring will be more likely to be healthy, smart, good looking, and successfully produce grandchildren for your next, well, grandchildren. I would like grandchildren too, but maybe my kids aren't that pretty yet. Okay, and we need to take a minute just to remind ourselves that what we think is pretty is not necessarily what animals think is pretty. And so colors are attractive and all that bright plumage is very attractive, but other features can be used to lure and attract females. And this particular organism is a male porcelain fiddler crab. And in fiddler crabs, what they do is the males grow one really big arm and they wave it seductively at the females. Hey, 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 I got a really big arm. Look at my really big arm. Hey, look at my really big arm. And they show off how big and pretty that one big claw is, and that is how they attract mates. Not necessarily a trait that I think humans would particularly find appealing, but perhaps. Now, again, in the realm of maybe what we don't think is attractive might be attractive to another organism. If you live in an environment where being camouflaged is actually really important and standing out and looking really vibrant and beautiful would actually probably get you killed a lot more often than not. Um, you have to come up with some other plan to be attractive to the females and get their attention. These are hooded seals, and the female in the upper left-hand corner, and the other two are males. They're prey for polar bears, and polar bears hunt primarily by sight. And so, if that big red structure was visible most of the time or during breeding season, there wouldn't be very many hooded seals left because they'd be very easy to find by the polar bears. And so what they opt for is a temporary attraction. And what they do is they actually inflate a sac in their nostril, and it inflates and is bright red because of the vascularization, the blood flow that runs through it. And that gains the attentions of the females. And she uses the nostril sac as a way to choose her mates. So this one might not be the best plan for you to employ if you're hoping to get some good tips for finding a mate, but it works for hooded seals. In some animals, though, if fighting isn't going to work and being attractive isn't going to work either, so you have to impress with something else. And so you're going to have to impress with some kind of action. You're going to have to dance, you're going to have to sing, you're going to have some kind of a talent, or maybe it's just the way you drum your fins together in the perfect rhythm. But you're going to have to do something in order to attract attention. So we're going to look at behavioral signals. So I'm going to play this song, this sound for you. This is a frog, a green tree frog, and we're going to hear its sound here in a minute, but this sound that it's making is a signal for females. This is basically the frog equivalent of, hey, ladies, I'm over here. This sound can be heard up to 300 yards away. If we scale that up for humans, as you're listening to this sound, if we took the average height of a male in the United States, that 300 yards for this frog would be the equivalent of 1.5 miles for a male. So this sound, if we translate it into humans, would be audible 1.5 miles away. That's pretty impressive in terms of distance, but it's nothing compared to a marine organism that uses sound in order to be heard and to attract mates. Whale song may not sound super sexy to you, but these whales can sing and attract mates from over 3,000 kilometers away. That's basically if you were able to sing a song from your front porch and someone from Oklahoma could hear you and decide to come pay you a visit. We'll just listen to a little bit of this. Okay. Whoop, there we go. So that's a really a cool way to make sound and attract mates, especially if you live in an environment like the ocean where maybe perhaps colors isn't, or the open ocean where color isn't going to work and fighting seems a little dangerous. Another example that you might have heard before, and actually it's the subject of a huge mystery back in the 80s as residents along the coastal shores of Pacific Northwest kept hearing weird sounds coming from the shoreline. If you may have heard of this particular organism, this is a um, plain fin midshipman. So hang on. That's not the sound. Hang on just a sec. Uh, Here we go. That's the sound of the plain fin midshipman basically vibrating the air sac that's inside of a lot of different kinds of fish called a swim bladder. And each male makes a territory, finds a place where a female can lay eggs, and then vibrates their air sac to make that humming sound throughout the whole nighttime to attract a female to his nest. If he's successful, the female will come in and lay her eggs. He'll stay there to guard them while the female can move off and not have to wait while the eggs hatch out. So that's a couple different ways to sing for your mate, but you can also maybe do a dance. And so here's a quick video showing you some flamingos and how they do their mating dance to try to attract mates.
This is how they choose their mates. These are Chilean flamingos, but wherever there are flamingos in the world, they do the same dance.
Now, I'm not entirely sure how they pick out a mate from that dance because, frankly, I think everything flamingos do looks silly. But somehow or another, the females are keeping their eye on the males and they're picking something out from that dance that makes them particularly happy. And I can't, I know this is not a marine creature, but I can't not share with you a video of one of my favorite animals of all times. This is a male peacock spider. And if you're afraid of spiders, I just let you know this thing is about like 4 millimeters big. It's a very, very tiny, tiny spider. So it's not scary at all. And unfortunately, this guy has to be pretty and dance and sing in order to attract mates. This is like the Harry Styles of the animal world. It's got to do all of it. We can't hear the sound because it's in a frequency that humans don't really pick up, but we'll give you a little bit of a taste of what the dance looks like. I really like that. I really like peacock spiders. They're fantastic. Okay, so what if you're not that handsome, or you can't dance, or you don't sing very well? If this is the case, then you're going to be stuck with bringing a gift, and it better be a good one. So we're going to take a look at offerings or gifts. The name for this type of mating behavior is called a nuptial gift. And it is common in a lot of different organisms across the animal kingdom. We find it in insects quite a lot. It's found in a variety of different types of birds. It's pretty common for in order to attract a mate is for a male to offer a gift. And in this particular species, these are common terns. The male catches a fish and he brings it to the female. Often he'll do a little dance around her, waving the fish around kind of as an enticement. And if she accepts the fish, then that's an invitation to mating. And so that's called a nuptial gift. We find them in kingfishers, employ this technique as well. Edible gifts are super nice because the female gets added calories and nutrients. And another little side trick here is it often kind of distracts the female a little bit while she's eating the fish, which gives the male an opportunity to come in and mate. And she's left with enough nutrients to provide for successfully raising of offspring. Well, that's a nuptial gift. Nuptial gifts don't have to be food. They can be something different. And this example is penguins, who the males have to bring pebbles to the female, and the female uses those to build a nest. And so she will mate with the male who brings her the best and most pebbles. And then in some cases, you get something just fantastic and something, in some ways, I think, rather bizarre. This is a Japanese pufferfish, and it uses the love language of the gift of service. It's providing a service to the female. And in this case, it is creating an enormous nest to entice the female to come mate with him. And the eggs will be laid inside of this nest. The females use these nests in order to determine which male they're going to mate with. And we'll watch this video. You'll get a sense for the size of these structures.
He can't rest for more than a moment, but must work 24 hours a day for a week, or the current will destroy his creation. A final tidy up, and his masterpiece is complete. Nowhere else in nature does an animal construct something as complex and perfect as this. If this doesn't get him noticed, nothing will.
So what I love about these is just the sheer size of them. Divers would see these elaborate designs. They called them what marine crop circles for a little while because they just couldn't believe that this little fish, which is only about the size of your hand, was creating these 12-foot wide structures. But that's exactly what's going on. It takes them about a week of solid work to make one. But if they've done a good job and it looks symmetrical, we're not exactly sure which or how the females are choosing, but if the female likes the way that it's done, she'll come to the very center. The male will kind of dust off a little space for her, very similar to the way salmon make a red where they lay their eggs, and the female will lay her eggs and the male will fertilize them, external fertilization into the center of this nest structure. Simply amazing. Okay, but what if you're not the biggest, the toughest, the prettiest, the best dancer? You can't build a beautiful nest, you can't sing, you don't have any gifts. There's really not a lot of options left. So what you're left with is maybe just trying to be the only option she's got, or being a little sneaky about it. So we're going to talk a little bit about deterring or sabotage. Classic example of this, and you guys may, I'm sure you've already heard about this because this is kind of the classic example of this. This is a anglerfish, and they have a strange mating strategy called parasitic males. So this absolutely gorgeous fish, which you can see here, has these two weird little appendages on the bottom of them, on the bottom of her. And we know that those are males because anglerfish have parasitic males. When the males are juveniles, they use their nose to find a female. And if they do find one, it's in the deep, there's not a good chance that they will. But if they do find one, they bite onto her body, pretty much just anywhere. And once there, they will become fused with her body and atrophy, eventually down to nothing but a sperm producing appendage. Females might have more than one of these parasitic males attached. The males, because they atrophy, don't cost her a lot of energy to support, but then she'll have a source of sperm whenever she might need them, without worrying about trying to find a male. So in this case, the male really has not given the female much of a chance. They are stuck together for life. Some animals get a little I don't know what the word is exactly here, but nasty, I think. They find a female that they can successfully convince to mate with them. They want to make sure that they're the only one who's mating with the female. And so they want to prevent other males, but they don't really want to hang around with the female for too long. So they use what's called a copulatory plug. Basically, after they have released sperm into their mate, they excrete a glue-like substance that effectively seals up the reproductive opening until the female has either released the eggs or given birth, or in crabs, as a notorious example, they cement their mate's reproductive opening shut after copulation, and the female won't be able to mate again until she molts that shell and has her new shell harden up. I think that's a little sneaky, and I don't like it very much. So maybe not, don't take that one as a good tip. Um, Another example we have of super sneaky are small animals or small fish, little guys, that they're not going to win the contest. Depending on the species of salmon, they go out to sea. We all know that they were born in fresh water. They go out to the ocean, and they generally return home, depending on the species, between 2 and 8 years after they're born. They go out to the ocean to get big. They come back all sexy and with their colors and their hooked jaws, and they attract females. Females are choosing the males that they like best. And when they found a male that they prefer, they will lay their eggs in a series of these structures we talked about called reds, cover them up, and then the whole life cycle of the salmon begins. But because the biggest, sexiest male is selected by the female, it pays to wait as long as you can before you come back to fresh water. But the ocean's a dangerous place, right? There's a lot of things out there that like to eat salmon, humans included. So some males return after only 1 or 2 years. These small males in salmon are called jacks, and they have zero chance of being selected by the female. And in this picture, you can see some really nice red males and some kind of a little bit pinkish but brown females. And then there's that one little guy there who doesn't have any pink on him at all, and he's very small. He's not going to get selected by the females. He's not. But what they do is they do kind of a sneak attack on the females. And so in this image here, you can see that we've got a series of males that are all following a particular female. The female has chosen her mate. She's preparing her redd, so she's about to release her eggs into the redd, where the male will then fertilize them. And that sneaky little jack hides behind some kind of a structure or maybe some other fish and waits until the female starts releasing her eggs and her chosen male releases his sperm. And he kind of swims past in a little dive bombing maneuver and releases his sperm over her eggs and then gets out of the way before the male can attack him. Some of those eggs will be fertilized by the jack and not by the chosen male. So it's a way of getting your genes into the next generation, even though no female is actually ever going to choose you. I think that's particularly sneaky. Now, in terms of super sneaky, I want to show you this little video about some cuttlefish and some crazy stuff that they do. So that's pretty sneaky. Cuttlefish can change their colors really easily, and in some cuttlefish will actually have one half of their body be colored like a male and the other half be colored like a female, and they'll keep the female side towards the male at all times while flashing the male coloration to the other females in the harem so that they can see that he's really a he, but the big male can't. So that's pretty cool. I think cuttlefish are pretty cool. So
Sue,
what dating? Go ahead.
I'll just ask this question because it's
Yeah.
contextually relevant.
Sure.
Do you know if jackfish also die after spawning? This is from Kim. Or do they return to the ocean and come back again when
No.
they're bigger?
No, they do die after spawning. They don't get to go back out to the ocean. So it's their one chance and done. But it's kind of it's a way of it's a different kind of bet, right? Instead of waiting until you're the biggest, best, strongest fish, you're like, I don't think my odds are that good. I'm just going to go back once and try to be as sneaky as I can and hope for the best. Um, Part of the reason why salmon runs are able to come back after disasters, landslides, bad weather, things like that can kind of wipe out a run in a particular year. Even though maybe that particular run will come back every 3 years, it'll repopulate fairly quickly because some salmon go a little early, they go a little late, and so they can make up for some kind of an annual loss of a run, in part because of those jacks. It's a great question. Okay, so hopefully you guys learned a few things about dating tips. So we'll go back to our story of Penelope for a second. The man who successfully captured Penelope's heart was, of course, Odysseus. And he's the one who went off to fight the Trojan War and won that war. So obviously, fighting or prowess in battle can be used in humans to secure a mate. But let's take a look at a couple of these suitors and see what they've got going on. What are they trying? And use this to compare to the things we just learned. All right, so we've got this guy, and he's not going to try battling, but he's going to try. Anybody know which of our techniques is this gentleman with the flowers employing? It's a test. Gifts is a good one, but in this case, we're not at it, it is gifts, but in this case, it's beauty. He's trying to be beautiful. He's got a gorgeous face. Notice that he's matched his robe to her robe. He does have the flowers, hoping to maybe make himself look even more beautiful. But he's employing beauty. And then we've got this guy here. I don't know. Personally, I don't think he's quite as good looking. Something about his face just isn't as nice as the first guy. But he's going to try singing or music with his lyre there, hoping that he can secure Penelope's favor through some kind of song or dance. And then it's really difficult to see this guy's face over here on the far right-hand side. But he has got a string of pearls and a gold little jewelry case. So he's definitely trying gifts. And then I don't know about this over here. This is one of Penelope's maids, but I like to think in the context of this talk that maybe this is actually one of the suitors trying to inveigle his way into Penelope's heart by pretending to be one of her maids. So getting a little sneaky. Okay, so hopefully you've taken some tips. If you don't know how this story pans out, it's a great story, and there's actually a big movie coming out this summer of Odysseus. If you don't remember your Homer from high school, but none of these suitors end up winning Penelope's heart. So. That is that is the end of my little talk. So if anyone has any questions, I'd love to hear them.
Thanks very much, Sue. You've definitely given us lots to think about in this thematic presentation. I really appreciate how you put things into themes for us within the types of approaches, because it does help us to understand animal life more fully, I think, and maybe even make some comparisons to whatever's going on for ourselves, perhaps. So we will open the floor to questions. Anything coming up for folks, please feel free to just unmute or pop a note in the chat. We've got a
Or
couple of
if you know
minutes.
or if you know of other great examples.
Oh, I'm going to share one then. The
Yeah.
sneaker fish of the plainfin midshipman. So there's a very small male who sneaks in and fertilizes the eggs and then sneaks away, leaving the other male to be the good dad who stays behind and dies for his offspring.
I
And he
love it.
actually does go to live on and be able to return another year. I don't know how many other years, but another year, anyways.
Fantastic. Thanks.
Yeah. We've got lots of kudos coming in the chat.
This is Kathy. I was wondering if the flamenco dance comes from the flamingos dance.
I think it does actually. I think it does. I have seen live flamenco dances, and there's definitely a resemblance to this odd flamingo dance. Flamenco has a lot of the tapping of the feet and then the quick kind of turning different directions. So I think it
Yeah,
does. I don't know for sure, but I would definitely say probably.
yeah, that stuff really reminded me of it. That's really cool.
Any idea what the loudest fish is? Heidi asks. Um, I don't know. I think the pistol shrimp is the loudest of the marine creatures. Is is it, I don't know. Do you know the answer, Heidi?
No, I don't. I was just curious if you did.
Yeah, I feel like I do, but I can't recall right now. It's if I'm remembering correctly, it is one of the croakers. And the croakers, they also use their swim bladder to make a loud noise. But what they do is they kind of expand the muscles around the swim bladder and then relax it. And so they're kind of like it's more like a drumming sound. Oh, Terry says the Google says, oh, the Gulf Corvino, 202 decibels. Dang. Wow. Uh, wow. There you go. That's damaging to your ears. That's so loud. There you go. All right. Anyone else have any good examples that they know of? Can you imagine, can you envision in your mind, um, uh, Margie asked, can you explain the group behavior of the flamingos? So they are trying to attract mates. And why do they do it as a group rather than individuals? I think is the question you're asking. So in a lot of birds, you'll like swans, right? Or well, a lot of the birds, the male will do a dance for the female, or will sing a song for the female, and it's like one male trying to attract one female. But in flamingos, and I know that there are other birds that do this as well. All of the group, the whole group of the flamingos will all dance together. And I think the idea there is that they're trying to stand out in some way. There's something about the way that they're dancing catches the eye of the female. And that's how they choose. So, oh yeah, Western grebes, that's true. Um, they are, in a sense, trying to make themselves look like individuals, but within the group behavior. Um, and so I wish I could tell you what flamingos were looking for, but I don't specifically know. I'm not sure anybody knows. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of pheromones that are about attracting mates. In the ocean in particular, smells from one organism to another organism is how a lot of the marine organisms find each other for mating. And that was Yogi. Hi, Yogi. Um, and uh, you know, I don't know. There's a whole we could talk about pheromones for a while. Pheromones are interesting. Uh, in fish, I didn't talk about it in this particular talk, but one of the other things that's really interesting about fish that many fish start off all female, and the biggest within a certain territory or group will become a male. And so there are certain chemical signals that happen inside of the body of the fish as they when they become the biggest, the dominant one, and that then turns them into males. Their gender is much more flexible than it is in some other animals. And so then the big, large fish in the group will be the male. And if something happens to him, then the next largest female will then transition and become a male. There are some fish that can go back and forth, male, female, back to female. Some start off as male and become female. The largest one will become female, and some there are smaller groups where the female will be considerably larger than the male. So anyway, it's a little interesting in fish. Fish get a little wacky in the way that they do things. That's why they're so fascinating.
Sue, I have another question. You know, like birds do cloacal kisses. Do fish do that?
Uh, so, so in fish, by far, the most common method of fertilizing eggs in fish is broadcast spawning. And so in broadcast spawning, the female releases her eggs out into the water column, and the male releases his sperm out into the water column, and and the eggs and sperm meet, and the fertilized egg floats off as a plankton and grows up to be another fish. The problem with broadcast spawning is that you have to make a lot of sperm to make broadcast spawning work. And those of you in Canada probably know this, but like when the herring spawn in the spring, there's so much heron sperm in the water, it actually colors the water around some of the islands in the Puget Sound white. You can see it from space, from satellites. There's so much herring sperm. And so that's not great, right? So things like salmon, they try to get together and really close to where the eggs are going to end up, so that the eggs are more likely to be fertilized, and you're not, you don't have to spread it all over the place. But there are some fish that have effectively internal fertilization. I don't know of any that have like the cloacal kiss exactly like birds do, but for example, sharks have effectively internal fertilization by using the claspers to transfer the sperm from their cloacas into the cloacas of the female sharks. But birds are just so, like, I don't, birds, it's really fast, and um, some of them even do it in the air. It's crazy.
I wonder, Sue, about barnacles. Do they even bother attracting a mate? Like I know apparently they have the largest penis to body ratio of any
Yeah,
animal in the kingdom, and they
true.
just sort of go round, you know.
Yeah.
Do
So
they choose? They just do it.
yeah, so there's no mate selection in barnacles that I've ever read about. Um, the problem with being a barnacle is that they are sexually reproducing organisms. They're related to the crustaceans, of course, which are sexually related or sexually reproducing organisms. So you've got males and you've got females, and the males have a penis type structure, and then they glue their heads to a rock. And so, if your head is glued to a rock and you need to reproduce sexually with a female, what are you going to do, right? You're going to have a really, really long appendage in order to get your sperm into a female. And so, yeah, it's a great bar bet. The barnacle penises are the longest penis in the animal kingdom relative to the size of the barnacle. And I always joke with my students that the average height of a male human had a penis as long as a barnacle does, the penis would be about 35 feet long, right? Which is a lot. Um, but no, they just kind of knock on the door, and if the female barnacle opens up, the penis goes in, and they produce sperm. In some species of barnacles. There's other species of barnacles which actually the male barnacles, when they're larvae, find a female barnacle and climb inside of her, and then they'll just hang out there in kind of a larval form, kind of feeding off of her, and then just releasing sperm whenever she needs it, which is pretty lazy if you ask me. But yeah. And then I think other than the long penis, the most fascinating thing about barnacles is in order to find a female, the penis of the barnacle has to be able to detect other barnacles that are of the same species. So, in some fashion or another, that penis has chemoreception, effectively like smell, and can find the females with the penis. So, I mean, come on, that's just weird. Efficient, but also a little unsettling. Yes. Barnacles are great. Okay. Anybody else? Otherwise, thanks for listening. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for joining us, Sue, and everyone else in the room. Hope you join us for our next session in the series. I believe Acretia, maybe we're looking at a March date. I don't know if we have the date set yet, though.
We actually have a speaker lined up for sure for April, and with the Salish Sea webinar series happening with the Georgia Strait Alliance through March and April for 4 weeks in a row. That'll be happening on Monday nights for March let me double check those dates. We'll start on March the 23rd and 30th, and April 13th and April 20th. And that's a really great series going on here in BC that very much mimics the same kind of information that we do here in these virtual speakers talks. So thank you, Yvonne just shared the link. So to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to attend those, we'll be holding off on our next speaker until April. And those dates will follow soon in our newsletters coming out over the next couple of weeks. We're just waiting to hear back from that speaker for confirmation.
Thanks, Crucia.
Thank
Thanks, everyone,
you.
for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.